Hi. Hey, it's Dr. Ev, and we are kind of in the midst of a series of videos. The first video, I posed the question, what is health? And we established that health is when the system that is responsible for optimizing health is functioning at its best, aka our nervous system is functioning at its best because our nervous system is the master controller of our body and does literally everything that our body does, our nervous system coordinates. So now we're at the third video of this series. We're talking about when things go wrong, because people ask me this question probably most of all. Why do I need this? Why does my body do this? Why can't my body just maintain its health and my nervous system just maintain its health all the time? And really what it is, it's stress accumulation and then the moment the system gets stuck. So let's get into it. Your nervous system is what controls everything, right? It's what perceives everything. That's our senses, right? When we take in data. It then makes sense of all of that in our perception, in our brain. And then it also creates and generates the output or the response to whatever it is that we just sensed. And this system is taking in, processing, outputting, taking in, processing, outputting. And it gets, frankly, overwhelmed. You do not have 3 separate inboxes in your brain for emotional stress, right? When things are going hard at home or you have a family member that's creating some stress in your life and you're worried or anxious about that. Physical stress, whether that be excessive movement, a trauma, or a lack of movement, and chemical stress, whether we drink too much wine or we're missing some vital nutrients or whatever that is, right? Those 3 categories that we think of, those aren't categories in our nervous system, in our physiology. They all go to the same place and they all need to be managed by the same exact system. So this is the thing that we really need to understand. It's about cumulative load on the system. So for example, I had a patient just this week who's had a recurrent episode of this low back tightness that hadn't shown up in a while, and she was getting headaches again after like months of no headaches, been really clear. And I was asking her what's going on, and she's like, it's so weird because I'm not doing anything differently. I am not like going harder on my workouts. I haven't been challenging myself in that way. I've been eating the same. And then I was asking her what's been going on emotionally and, and stuff. And she has a lot going on. Her mother's been in and out of the hospital, or her husband has some injuries. There's a lot going on. She's been feeling now that she's been pulled away and having to go into more of the caretaker role. So I reminded her of this fact. Hey, your nervous system is still the same system. It doesn't designate what's the right thing. Doesn't mean that you injured yourself doing an activity. It just means that the system's overloaded and it can't adapt properly. You might be able to recognize in your own life which type of stress you might have more of, right? If you don't have a ton of physical stress, maybe it's more emotional, maybe it's more chemical. But I will say to you, in our modern age, that we all have so much more stress than our nervous systems ever really knew that they were going to have to manage. Every single person in our modern age is overwhelmed. Every single person experiences this. Your body adapts beautifully until it can't, okay? We're handling it. And then there's something that becomes the straw that sort of breaks the camel's back, the drop in the bucket that makes it overflow. It could be anything. This is why you hear someone bends over and picks up a pen and their whole back goes out, right? It's not like that is usual. It's just the last thing that your body simply cannot adapt to. By the time symptoms appear, this pattern has usually been building for months or possibly even years. Okay? Remember, we went back and said symptoms aren't necessarily the sign that things are healthy or unhealthy, right? A lot of times these things are building before we ever even have a single symptom. So we start out on the spectrum of adaptation. We start out, we're thriving. We're handling everything that comes, fully adapting, no symptoms, we're full function. Or if we do get symptoms, they're the type that are really the proper adaptation kind. And we're having intelligent responses in the way that the body's designed. Perfect chef's kiss. Then we get into overwhelm. That's when we start getting into the compensating side of the spectrum. Subtle changes begin. We still function, but we're not being as efficient as we possibly could. There are things that are sort of starting to break down. This is when we get to disconnection, right? Our body is starting to guess what's happening because we don't have necessarily the full clear picture of what our body really needs. When we have disconnection for too long, that's when we start to get into dysregulation, distortion, dysfunction. This is when we start getting tension patterns that last a bit longer, that our bodies thought were a good way to cope with whatever was happening, but then we became sort of blind that they were still happening, and so our body left these things unchecked. Again, we're still overwhelmed, so it's hard to go back and deeply heal and recover and integrate. Now we're in the stress load phase of our adaptation spectrum, which is when our first symptoms really start to appear. We start to notice fatigue first, tension, intermittent pain perhaps, maybe just a little bit less function in our digestion, or we just can't breathe quite as deeply. These are kind of the early signs that we've been dysregulated for a while, right? If that persists for long enough, then we get into dis-ease. This is when we're stuck. This is when we are getting chronic symptoms. The pattern now has become the default. The pattern that was initially trying to be adaptive, now we're kind of stuck in it, and we don't really remember where our true north is, where that regulated homeostasis is. We've got a lot of blind spots in and up our system. And being in that state for too long means that we're really far away from that fully thriving, fully adaptive state. We're now on the other end of the spectrum where we're stuck. We're not adapting well at all. And that is a truly hard place for our system to be in, because if anything new comes in, any more overwhelm, any more stimulus, we just simply cannot handle it. That's when our resilience plummets. The cool thing is that chiropractic, because we see this as a cycle, we see how everything leads to each other, we also understand the different stress components that come in and create this interruption and interference into our body's own regulatory mechanisms. We have a lot of ways of improving and supporting the system so that we can get back to that fully thriving, fully adaptive place. In the next episode, we're going to talk about what it is exactly that a chiropractor is looking for, what exactly it is that we do, what exactly our adjustment is doing for this whole cycle, and kind of get into some of the nitty-gritty there. Share this video if you know somebody that would find it interesting, and subscribe so that you don't miss the next video of the series. All right, I'll see you next time. Take care.